What's worrying is how catastrophic they're burning out. There's no going back on that, is it? It's not a diode pop.
No, but put a posi fuse in the in the line, and then it'll basically go open circuit when you get too much current, and it'll stay that way until you remove the power.
I've sneakily gone live because you guys were talking some interesting stuff. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. We were just talking about, of course, Ian is repairing something for his child. He tells us that's the story.
Repairing is a loose Tim.
That's the story he's bringing us. He's telling us.
Do you dress your children in asbestos to handle repairs?
It is a Nintendo. It is if we think parts in the drone industry are expensive, try buying a replacement Joy-Con for a Nintendo Switch at 70 quid. So yes, repair is preferable.
And what is a Joy-Con? I don't even know what that is.
It's basically
you're so old school, Gary. You're so old.
Controller on the side of the Nintendo.
You probably still play magnetic chess or something, do you?
So, funny enough, we are looking for a chess set.
Yes, I've burnt another ear unit as they were taking the mickey. I now have a box of burnt out ear units. I'm building up a supply. Get your broken ear units. Get your ear units.
Remember,
bring out your dead. Bring out your
never raced or rallied. Never raced or rallied. There's the Bible on the back seat. I used to go to church in it.
But when DJI end this system, and it's not if, it's when they end this system, I'm going to hopefully have a good business in used parts, untested, as they're always labeled on eBay, because anything you buy on eBay like this is always untested.
So tell us again your theory on why you're blowing up.
Yeah, I've burnt two out now. I burnt one on the bench on a bench supply. I still don't fully understand that because there was no motors involved. There was no the assumption on the first one is the bench supply surged. The second one was a rather harsh. No, it wasn't even a harsh landing. It was a bit of a landing. I'm still getting used to the new remote with I'm getting used to the Mambo, which is I really like, but it has this shoulder button which isn't as easy, or you've got to push it in to release. So there isn't a natural flick of a switch to disarm on it, because like in most FPV 5-inch, landing is a controlled crash. It's the point you kill the motor which dictates how smooth the landing is, and because you're having to latch in and out, it's just not as comfortable as a traditional flip switch, and I misjudged it by like a second, which gave the aircraft a little bit of a bounce. You've got it on that as well, have you, Bruce? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It just has that. The action is natural. You like
but
it?
I land smooth. You can hardly tell my drone has landed. It's so smooth.
Right.
I don't do the crashes like what you do.
No.
So and it bounced, and it literally bounced, and it gave off the magic smoke. That's the story.
There we are. And another one bites
the dust. It's only 100 quid a pop. Don't worry about it. It's yeah.
I am in touch with the world, out of touch with the world. My word.
The cost of digital FPV. That is the reality.
Can you repurpose the remains? Can you make a nice little snuff box out of the metal container or something?
Yeah, well, I can't. I don't. This box of dead is building up. I've got spare RF boards if anyone needs one. Now, there will be people who do want the RF board because the MMCX connectors are also terrible and they do break. So there will be a market for RF boards.
And you'll be supplying that market,
right? You're creating your own spares section there.
Yes. But look, there is a real argument here, and this leads on to another subject which we probably don't want to get into yet, which was talking about on the weekend. There's been a lot of hoo-ha in the last couple of weeks over the different digital systems. You got SharkBite, which is building up. You got DJI, which is established, and we're starting to see a resurgence of SharkBite simply because they literally slashed the price of the system.
Yeah, that was an amazing discount.
It was amazing. There is one I bought for $99 where it was originally 250, and it was simply done to gain market share. The reality is DJI, you can't buy cameras for the DJI system right now. You can't buy anything for it. So Fat Shark basically went, let's use some of that VC money and try and gain some market share. And it has dragged a lot more people into the system, and there's been a lot more conversations around Sharkbite versus DJI. But the interesting conversations I've been having is really analog versus Sharkbite, because they are pushing this as an analog replacement product. DiviMath are saying they want to be the next analog. And some people have liked and not liked my comments in the last couple of days on some of the groups, which is, hold on a minute, this is proprietary. Whichever way you spin this, it is a closed proprietary system, just like DJI. Now, whilst we can sit there and say, okay, I think Next Wave makes most of the analog modules, but anyone could make that chip if they wanted to. Bruce, we could go and make an analog receiver on the bench. So just because one company is the main supplier doesn't mean it's closed. Whereas the difference with Sharkbite and HD0 is if DiviMath ceased to exist, so does the system. And that's where there is a bit of play on words on this, and it's nothing against DiviMath or DJI. I'm fully supportive of the system they've made. I like what they're doing, but let's not pretend it's open source. It isn't, and you are replacing analog, which is an open system, with a closed proprietary system that is no different to DJI. No matter which way you spin this, it is closed and proprietary, like DJI. The only real difference is DiviMath are open to working with multiple companies, but that doesn't change the fact without that chip, you're stuffed.
The other thing too is that analog has always been totally backwards compatible. You know, the analog gear I bought, 10 years ago still works today without any problems. And my concern with the DiviMath is that it is quite an old chip now. It's been around for a long time, the DiviMath chip. And it doesn't deliver the kind of performance you could get by re-rolling that silicon today. This is why DJI is probably so much better, because DJI developed their system long after DiviMath came out with the HD0, whatever it is. So what's going to happen to all the people with Sharkbite when DiviMath or whoever or Sharkbite rolls out their improved system? Is there going to be any backwards compatibility? I have a feeling there probably won't. They'll just say, well, we're moving on. You'll have to buy the new gear. And so the entry cost now is quite low, especially with the discounts. And I'd say, yeah, go for it. But be aware that when you want something better, you're probably going to have to replace everything again.
Yeah. Yeah, and my points on the, I put quite a big post on the DiviMath group, and some people were a bit anti on it. But my point was this: the FPV community needs to be careful. It's not walking out of the arms of the devil into the blue sea, because analog is free. It doesn't matter who makes the chipset, it's free. And moving into a closed proprietary system, they may have all the best intentions today. They are really active with the community. DiviMath are really good. Carl, who's their main guy, it seems, is really I can't even say the word. He's communicating with the industry. He's talking, he's taking feedback. They're changing stuff all of the time. But that's today. That company could be sold in 2 or 3 years' time and something changes. So what you can't do is base an industry on what is being said today. I would prefer to see an open system. Bruce has said they should make it open source, and I do agree with that, and they should move it to a licensing model, publish the IP for the chipset and make it a licensing model, and that way at least we can sit back and say, at least if the company goes under, the community carries on. Because what you could end up with is 2 or 3 different vendors, and one of them being bought by another, and then one being bought by the other, and then we're back into the square one where everyone was trying to avoid DJI. DJI could be the one that buys them all.
Okay, but sorry. You already have a digital transmission system that is open source. You can go OpenHD and get what you want. So why are you complaining? There are advantages on the closed system that the open source system does not have, but you have an alternative. Sorry,
it's about 100 milliseconds difference. That's
not if you want to
problem.
fly quad near objects. Not if you want to fly proximity. The OpenHD is great for fixed wing with a flight controller where you're just steering it or setting a waypoint. But if you want to actually fly close proximity, OpenHD isn't really there yet. And looking at this is kind of like the Connex system. You know, the original digital FPV.
Connex.
Connex came out. You can't buy it now. You can't buy spares. You can't. If you got it, it still works. It still works, but you're locked in there. And when it stops working, well, you have to buy something else. But I mean, that's the thing. If what, Louis? What? Go.
No, come on. It's based on open source components. It has a lifetime of I don't know how many years a Raspberry Pi is supported. So what's the problem? If it needs improvement, why don't you go and improve it?
You can't. The hardware limitations prevent you from improving it. There's not a case of just writing better software. There are hardware limitations in the OpenHD that you really can't get around if you're packaging stuff up like that and you're using a Raspberry Pi. That's why they don't use those components in the proprietary system, because you have to be better at that. But the thing is, with the SharkBite, if you buy it now, it's a good price. It works. Even if SharkBite goes tits up, then you're still going to have the gear. It'll still work and it'll still be doing what it did before. So I don't think sort of the risks associated with going with a proprietary brand like that are that great, because you'll still be a happy user. It's like when someone brings out a next version of a product, so many people go, oh no, I've only got the old one. And so many people bought version 2 DJI goggles because it was the next version, and they didn't need to, but they did anyway. You don't need to do that. I've got stuff I bought years and years ago, and I still use it, and it still works, and I'm still a happy camper, and I've got more money in my pocket as a result.
And that's really where I've been, up till now, there's been this push that one is good and one is bad. And this is the bit I do object to, is that saying DJI is evil and SharkBite is good. We have to look at this objectively. They're both closed. They're both proprietary. They both could end it tomorrow. One is working with the community more than the other. But as Bruce rightly said, if both systems ended tomorrow, your current gear would still work. So I think they've got to get away from this go for it because DJI is evil. It needs to start selling itself now on its own merits. And I've been flying it. I've done 5 packs tonight on their new goggles. I like it. It does have some real downsides at the moment for long range compared to DJI. And I don't mean this range. I'm noticing some interesting quirks, which I want to test with different antennas. Because, for instance, when I'm flying on within, say, 30 meters on the same plane, everything is really quite good. But the second you get some altitude, the system really begins to fall over. And that's partly because of the directional antennas in the goggles, although I am using Omnis as well. But I'm ordering more antennas tonight to try something different. But again, this is having to do stuff you simply don't have to do on the other system. It just works.
Yes, my experience that the RF link and the SharkBite is nowhere near as good as the DJI, and in fact, it's not as good as analog in my opinion. What happens is they've got those patch antennas built in, so people think, well, this is pretty similar to analog, but most people don't fly analog with 2 patch antennas, so they've actually sort of mitigated the poor RF performance by building patches into the goggles, and that's fine as far as it goes. But as you say, if you fly altitude, you've probably got your head down, you're out of the beam of the patch, suddenly it all goes to hell in a handbasket, and even your Omnis have got the donut shaped pattern, so you're getting into the null of the Omnis. DJI just laughs at that, and analog to a degree laughs at it too, because the other thing that I really haven't gotten to grips with SharkBite is the way it degrades. I mean, you get speckles, but when it goes, it just like someone's flicked a switch, and you just got rainbow patterns all over your image. Whereas with analog, you've got, even through the snow, you can see an amazing amount through high levels of snow, but you can't see much through the SharkBite haze. And DJI, of course, is far more progressive in its degradation. So it's the scariness. I wouldn't fly long range with SharkBite because it could go almost in the blink of an eye. Same when you're flying proximity, you go behind something and bing, everything's gone in an instant, and that scares me as a pilot.
It's interesting because I'm flying with Pagodas at the moment, and I'm going to swap them out for Omnis, just different Omnis. I'm going to go for some of the True RC antennas, and I don't think I was hitting the nulls on the Pagodas today. However, it was clear at anything above 50, 60 meters, the RF behavior was very different, very, very different to below. And again, okay, the patch antennas, it was very noticeable. I had to make sure my orientation was right all of the time. You know, what I'd do is I'd move and I'd find myself, I know I'm not pointing right. And with Sharkbite, it's really easy to see where you're off because the field of view on the goggles is very narrow. So literally you go, you know, you turn like that and suddenly you start getting the speckles, and you turn like that and it's back. And it is this, there's no slack in the system is the term I mean, in the sense of DJI has that retransmit, so it can cope with a bit of loss and it just carries on. Whereas the second something's off on this, you start degrading, and it can degrade very quickly.
Okay, so question for Ian and Bruce, the 1,000 euros question. If I want to buy an FPV system and I want to fly at, say, 500 meters away and 250 meters high, which system do I get?
Is latency important to you?
Well, as long as I don't want to crash something.
No, and when I'm saying latency, I'm talking the difference between maybe feeling a tad. I'm not talking, oh my God, there's suddenly a tree, I can't avoid it. We're talking the difference is real time versus 50 milliseconds. If latency isn't important, it's got to be DJI in that scenario. It just has to be, because it stands up better. When you look at these two, it really comes down to the first question. It's latency. For anyone between these two systems, what's more important? Latency and airside recording. If you need lowest latency, it's got to be Sharkbite. If you want
or analog
or analog, between digitals. But yeah,
no, come on, guys. It's 1,000 euros question. So I assume both systems cost.
How much money have you got? Because if you've only got $350,
€1,000, €1,000. That's how much money.
Yeah. I have a Teradex system that costs what, $7,000.
Yeah. So if money's no object, look, there's a 1 milliwatt VTX coming. We believe that's the unofficial rumor.
Milliwatt or what?
1 watt. Yeah, 1,000 milliwatt. Sorry, 1 watt. There's 1 watt coming, and the current system.
You put that on your head. You put that.
Well, that's the VTX. No, VTX. There's a VTX coming now. That should push the range a chunk more. It'll be interesting to see, but the belief is that should make a decent impact. But we'll have.
Yeah, it's going to cause other problems, though. It's going to cause even more problems
there, though, because that just make it 1 million watts.
Yeah, that's great. Hardwire it. Just have a cable. Have a cable.
Most control line FPV. Most people are flying DJI at 1,200. That's the thing, and the eyes on their head, Louis, because the goggles are transmitting out at 1,200 as well. So, you know,
it depends what you want to do, though, Louis. If you want to do close proximity, then without too much problem, then the Sharkbite would work. If you want to go longer range, then the DJI would be better. But if you want to go maximum range, you can only use analog. If you want to go beyond 13 kilometers. Beyond 13 kilometers. No, if you want to go beyond.
I'm speaking, and the scenario I gave you was 500 meters away.
Well, Open HD, definitely.
Yeah, if you don't care about latency, Open HD.
Don't care about latency, go Open HD. You'll be fine.
The funny thing is, I really like.
We have alternatives.
You know, I want to say, and I'll say it now again, I really like where Sharkbite is going. But what I don't like is this attitude that seems to be coming from the community on it, that anything you say negative is you're either paid by DJI or you're against. At the end of the day, DiviMath, Fat Shark, they're a company that want to strip us of money. Whilst it's in their interest to help us, they will, and they'll listen to the community, but they all have someone they want to please. And in the end, you can't trust any company to always do the right thing. And both should be subject to the same scrutiny. You can't sit here and say DJI's evil because they're Chinese, DiviMath isn't because they're American. Well, that's not reality. So,
what do you mean about Ruby? I don't know about Ruby.
Ruby, I don't know Ruby. Do you know Ruby?
No.
No, I know that. Well, let's have a look.
Is that Bruce's new HD system? But I do like what they're doing. There's some really interesting stuff. And look, $100. It is a no-brainer of a deal to pick the module up for that. I'd love to know how much of that VC money they have been through doing that stunt.
Is that relevant? As long as they get...
How much did they have? Wasn't it like 157 million or something, Gary Redcat?
Oh, they've had lots of different things. I'm just getting up an RC Groups link, a Ruby Digital video link.
Oh,
hang on.
It's a fork of OpenHD.
Yeah, I knew it. That ring.
It's a fork. It's a fork. Oh, okay.
It's a bad name because there's a programming language called Ruby.
Yeah, I was going to say.
There's also an autopilot called Ruby as well.
And a girl. I know a girl called Ruby.
And a girl, yeah.
Because someone said to me the other day, I was talking about this, and someone said, yeah, but every flight controller uses ARM. Okay, most flight controllers use ARM, but if ARM ceased to exist tomorrow, we can recode on any multi-controller. So, just because there are companies that supply the most chipsets doesn't mean it's necessarily closed. But we've got to see. It's getting better. I've got the new camera for the system, which is better. It's still not what I want. I want more. It's still not good enough.
More.
But it's beginning to make an impact. It's amazing to see how many people bought at 99. They must have done well because the community seemed to jump overnight. A lot more people overnight.
And if you've been watching my channel, you'd have seen a flight controller I made with a pick.
Yeah. And the thing
back in the day.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Thing based on pick. Wait there. Who the company that stopped making them last year? I did a video on it. Eagle Tree Vector. The Vector's pick based.
Yes. Yeah, hang on. I've got a pick based one here somewhere. Talk amongst yourselves, so maybe a while. Where is it? And what happened with the firmware, DJI firmware update? That's
okay. Yeah, that's been a bit okay. So they've released. I need to go and check something because someone said they've pulled it, but I don't believe they would have. So they've released a new firmware update to close the door on a hack released by Drone Hacks. Drone Hacks about 3 weeks ago released a hack which allowed you to remove all no-fly zones and all altitude limits on certain DJI models using their own certificate system. So DJI have a system to allow you to bypass NFCs. So if they give you permission, they install a certificate on your device. Louis will have used this regularly. They found a way of using that against the system and basically installing their own certificate that removed all restrictions. So DJI have unsurprisingly released a firmware update that blocks that. Now, I did say when this hack released, I wasn't particularly, not pleased isn't the right word, but I never even, and I didn't make a video on it because I still have reservations about ready-to-fly drones being unlimited in some ways. The fact that someone can go and buy a Mavic Mini for $250 or $300 and be able to fly it up to 1,000 meters. So I'm not against having the 500-meter limit. I think if you want to fly above 500 meters, learning to build a drone that can do it is probably a good idea. And you'd hope along the way you learn a few more things, if you get my meaning on that. So DJI have released a firmware update to block it. It's not surprising, it was a direct attack on their own system. They were always going to close the door on that, like it or not. I don't blame them.
If you get the private key compromised, then you'll have much bigger problems than a simple update they have to do. Come on. But a private key released, who knows which other private keys have been leaked to the outside? So they might have a bigger problem than just a single.
Now this is very interesting, right?
His fault.
This is really interesting. This looks like they have pulled this. Because I'm now on their website where I read the release notes off their website and they're gone.
What's that mean if I've updated mine to their new latest and greatest, which won't let me backdate it?
Yeah, because they were stopping downgrades, weren't they, as well?
They were, because they'd have pulled the downgrade option for security reasons.
Oh God.
Okay.
There we are. That's interesting.
Oh God.
That's not the first time that's happened either with them, is it?
So now we have an unsupported release with no ability to downgrade.
Oh God! I think that programmer has a memory problem if he has to put the private key in plain text in the software. He has a really good memory problem.
Okay, so interestingly, it only appears gone for the A2S. It's still there for the FPV drone. Let me just have a look at the A2. So that might mean there was something that they broke.
What did they do to the A2S?
Yeah, and they've removed it for the A2 as well. Okay, so they've removed it for the A2 and the A2S. So my bets are they screwed something up in the update and they've wound it back.
This is DJI we're talking about. They would never screw up.
Exactly. They've screwed something up in the update and they wound it back.
I'm sorry, guys. They really have some bigger problems to sort out if they have such basic security problems. So if they have such basic security problems on their code, and this comes up and these things come up to the authorities, how do they want to get known as a good boy to the FAA's or US Department of Commerce?
Yeah, your data is safe with us, but our data isn't.
I wouldn't call it basic, man. It's taken 3 or 4 years for this to happen. But you could argue, has it taken 3 or 4 years to find the exploit?
People have been looking all the time, and look what they did this time round.
You know, they've been hacking, but this is a new hack. They've never had it this way before. And look, these guys have been attempting to hack this stuff for a long time. So this is a new find. Whether it's easy or not, I don't know. That's, to be fair to DJI, this was the first time we've ever seen their own certificate system hacked against them. It's very interesting. They've pulled it on the map. Yeah, for the no-fly zone, all of the other hacks have been a modification to the flight controller via software, whereas this was basically, rather than DJI providing you a certificate, Drone Hacks provided you what the drone thought was a legitimate certificate and let you have full access. Now, it's still there for the FPV drone, which would make me think they want to keep it going, or they'd have pulled it off all two. The fact they've moved it off the A2 and the A2S, I think they have found something. Because the problem is this. To fix a problem like that is probably going to be really difficult for them. And it's going to mean they're going to have to change how they actually do their current certificate system. It's not as simple as just patching a hole because they're using their own system against them. They may have to completely change how they use their unlock system as a result of this.
We did, didn't we? They did this happened before. This has happened before.
Oh yeah, other parts of their infrastructure. Yeah, I mean on the no-fly zone. Yeah. So it's someone had tipped me off. They've pulled it, and sure enough, the release notes are gone.
Now the thing is, how can they be trusted by the authorities, especially in the US, if they have such basic problems?
Well, you can't, but there's also you can't just pull something in aviation. You can't just say, "Oh no, rip out page 17 of the map." Put this page in today, and rip it out tomorrow. The regulators would hate that, and there's no note to say, "Oh, by the way, we've pulled this version of whatever." There's no documented change.
This firmware is gone. Yeah, we now have a set of release. There is no so there are people out there flying, and in fact, the only evidence that exists is probably in my video right now, unless you downloaded the release notes, because the website doesn't have it. This firmware doesn't exist. Those who are flying it are flying a firmware which is no longer documented. So yeah, as you say, but this isn't the first time they've pulled stunts like this. They've pulled.
So how does it tie in with all the regulators now saying as part of your safety systems you must always update to the latest software, and it's no longer existing, you can't downgrade, and so all DJI drones are grounded now.
But what is the latest software? Is it the last one, or is it the one they pulled, or and that's what the regulator would say,
or the one that does not crash the drone?
don't just change stuff willy nilly, because it's got to be gone. And it won't be long before regulators will be saying, "Oh, by the way, before you're allowed to release your firmware updates, we'd like you to tell us what they do."
Yeah.
Well, apparently they're changing the name of the company to the Slapdash Drone Company now.
Well, I'm sure you could have come up with something better for that from DJI. I'm sure you can. I know. I'll give you a little bit of time.
To be fair to them, the blocking of the hack is completely expected. The day I saw that come out, I was like, ooh, they'll be patching that in short order. That was inevitable. But as you say now, is there anything on the news website? I doubt they've never really published this. Let me just.
I've got to wonder why they bother with all these restrictions.
Do you think they'll do a press release about this? Oh, DJI just announced that they have recalled their latest firmware because they have a very insecure platform. Oh, God, that would make a very nice press release.
I'm sure Autel will issue that release.
Also, he can write it for me.
But why do they bother? I can't understand why DJI bother to cripple their drones in this way. It's supposedly to curry favour with the regulators, yet the FAA kicked them off the Drone Advisory Committee, so it's not working. And they don't restrict total flight distance, and we're all told BV loss is the real killer. That's the thing that will bring down aircraft. You fly BV loss, you've got to have special certifications, and even the commercial operators at the top, they've got to have special environments in which to fly BV loss. But DJI keeps advertising 4, 8, 12 kilometers of range, and that doesn't seem to matter, but they won't let you fly here. Like I can't fly my drone because I'm in around an airport and I'm illegally entitled to. I really get annoyed at that. And other drone manufacturers seem to have got away with that geofencing and haven't created a huge problem. So what is DJI's end game?
Yeah, well, that was part of the original FAA placating situation. I mean, and so they've got a historical thing they've ended up. They've created.
So what do they gain from it?
On something, I'm more than comfortable with an altitude limit. I think 500 meters is enough for anyone who really needs it. And
but how many countries in the world can you fly over 400 feet legally? So why make it 500 meters? It means you're still allowing people to break the rules. And it's the same with the airports. Most airport exclusion zones are measured in kilometers. DJI's is measured in hundreds of meters. So it doesn't stop people doing the things. It just really inconveniences people who have a legitimate reason to want to use it in those environments. It's not contributing significantly to anything. And it obviously hasn't carried the favor that they wanted with the FAA. What have they got for this from the FAA? What are concessions have been given to them? Nothing. The US government has basically said you can't use DJI drones on our soil or with our products, and they're saying that you're off the Drone Advisory Committee, DJI. So they're getting nothing back, and they're basically screwing customers.
No, you think on the face of it, it's just good marketing material, doesn't it? Really, and so does ADS-BN. It's all marketing fodder, really. It will. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. But I'm in my head, I'm trying to think in my head, in other industries like the motor industry and things like that, which probably have firmware updates for cars and things, who regulates or machinery? There must be, certainly for your aviation manuals, if you update it, you've got to resubmit your manual, etc., etc., etc. You can't just pull a page out. There must be similar things in other industries, surely.
It is becoming a new problem. There has been a lot of talk around Tesla of recent times because Tesla are changing their hardware so fast and so regularly. There are cars leaving the factory today which were different yesterday, and I was listening to a really good talk on Tesla is the sort of first very computer based car company. Cars are notoriously old in how they put technology in, and whilst there are some cars that are clever, Tesla have pushed it to a much bigger level, but they're now changing hardware so often. There are so many different revisions of firmware, there are so many different hardware on board. How are they going to cope, and how are the regulators going to keep on top of all of these changes? They're knocking autopilot changes out every couple of weeks. They're making is there a risk that they're going to at some point introduce something potentially very dangerous?
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be the software certification will be part of the MOT test. because you need to have a certified safe version of the firmware. So, they'll have to have all these processes in place, or you won't be able to drive your car.
Oh no, you're on version 4.3. Everyone else is on 4.7. 3.2 was the better one, but
well, it's bad enough now. Yeah, you take your car to the garage and they say it needs a firmware update, but it's where do we manage this? Where do we begin to take? And drones is in this problem. There is a real good argument to be had that, as I can't remember, was it Louis or Bruce said that when do the firmware get certified by the FAA or the CAA or whoever? Because if we go back and look at some of the biggest issues in products, it's often been introduced in firmware. Very few have had it from day one. Most of the time issues are introduced with a new update. That's when the majority of problems arise.
That's why my Phantom 3 Pro is still on the same firmware as when it arrived. No changes seen.
You old school person.
The Bruce's Tyrannis is still on
the original firmware. Yeah, and it's still working to this day.
Yeah,
that's one of the issues. Come on, it's inherent to software design and the speed that people have to put software on the street. So where do you cut? Testing and documentation. Those are the two obvious places. If you have detected a bug, you just rush out everybody to correct that bug, and we'll think about documentation and testing later. If it works and corrects the issue detected, fine. If new issues come up, well, unintended consequences, but that's life on the software side.
Yeah, we don't care about your firmware and the effects it can have on your drone, but you've got to have a visual observer if you're flying under the trees in a park.
Okay. Well, let's jump. Actually, let's jump. That's a good time to jump to. What am I jumping to? To this here. Let's keep it real, man. This came out as part of this guiding excellence, but it comes from, zoom it in a bit more, from an FAA meeting. And I don't know how clear this is going to be, actually, but it says some very interesting things about where people can fly, and telling us that the CBO hobbyist pilot only allowed to fly in what's those FRIAs, and then non-hobbyist CBO, no FPV, BLOS, electronic path, or commercial operations. Electronic paths, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Waypoints.
No, I get that, but where is that actually defined? I'm not sure that's actually been defined anywhere officially, and so on and so forth. And Part 107 Advanced Commercial Pilot. So there's been lots of conversations going on in the background with the exact path that we've been talking about in the foreground. Oh, I was hoping one of you would.
I should, but because if you're a hobby pilot, you can't fly FPV outside of a FRIA, despite the fact that we've been flying FPV much longer than any commercial operators or anything. We've been flying FPV forever. Most of the hobby pilots are extremely skilled at FPV, proximity, quads, and all that sort of stuff. But we are not permitted to fly outside of a FRIA. Whereas if you go and do your Part 107 and you can tell which way up the clouds are supposed to be, you then suddenly have the skills to fly FPV. But only rotary wing. You can't fly fixed wing anything unless you go and do something else. It's like the people who have designed this little matrix here have no idea what they're doing. Oh, they must be at the FAA or the bureaucrats or a politician somewhere. It's like, seriously, this is why we must challenge these ridiculous regulations, because they have no bearing at all on risk or anything else. It is just something plucked out of people's backsides in order to monetize the airspace.
No fixed wing or crew unless rated crew remote pilot or visual
crew
remote pilot.
What difference does it make if you've got someone's... Hang on a minute. So that's why you can't fly FPV, because your crew would be your visual observer. So you can't have anybody else involved in the operation. And you can't fly fixed wing. Excuse me, well, what?
And Part 107 Advanced Commercial Pilot, I'm not sure. Someone in America tell me. I'm not sure that that's actually a thing yet. I don't think that's a thing. So there we are, a little glimpse of the future, perhaps. We shall see. We shall see what occurs.
The word dystopian springs to mind.
No, it's spring here. Yeah, no, that got me quite interest peaked.
Oh, gratuitous chair shot. Gratuitous chair shot.
There we are.
Link in the description.
Well done. Above and beyond. So was that no to the advanced commercial gig? Was that perhaps you'll enlighten me? Because like I say, I don't think that's there yet. So we'll keep an eye on that little one unpacking. I love it when people drop in screenshots of slide packs they've seen at meetings that were supposed to stay in that meeting and then they get used in other things. I love it when that happens. I love that a lot. He's got a telephone call up there, hasn't he? It's all going on in Wales. The recurrent desk did have questions.
Probably setting a battery on fire. 1 second.
True to form. It's that poor kid's little Nintendo thing is burst into flames.
That's right. What did he say? 70 quid to replace it or whatever?
And 150,000 quid to replace the damage to the house as it burns down.
Right. And I wonder if they'll send him another chair. That's probably be the worst of it. What else was I going to say? I was going to say that there's not really been a lot of news. It's a Tesla. That is a T for Tesla chair. I don't actually know what the brand of that chair is. I don't know about these things. There's been very
nice chairs here. Come on, we don't do free advertising. The only guy that does advertising is Ian.
This is like the BBC.
Yeah. Yes. And that other chair is quite lonely. It's quite lonely without branding, isn't it? The other one. Here I sit, I'm just a plain old ugly old chair. There it is. But there is a commercial UAV show happening in the USA right now. And I was expecting somebody to come along and join us from that show. So perhaps there is no internet on the floor or something like that. I don't know. So that's a bit of a pity. But there's been blow all press releases from it. And in London next week, there's another big show. And I would normally be receiving embargo press releases a week away from an event. And again, there's been blow all media releases. So have we hit an absolute plateau in the market? Is that it? We're in the doldrums. We're just plodding on.
Peak drone months ago, didn't we? We passed peak drone ages ago, and it's so last year now. It's like the computer shows. I used to go to computer shows in the 1980s. They were vibrant, new stuff every time. Every show there was new gear, and it was all different and fantastic. And IBM came along and sort of stabilized the market. And it was still, improvements. The Compaq had a faster one, and all the other companies had smaller ones or whatever. And now computer shows, apart from GPUs, they seem to be the only thing that's changing. It's like I hadn't been to a computer show in years because they just got so samey and it was just boring, the same stuff painted a different color. I think we're probably facing the same thing with drones right now.
So we are starting to see more and more specialization on drones because the regular commercial drones, like it or not, are taken over by DJI. And the other guys are still trying to figure out how to catch up with them, no matter the security and all the problems they have. So they're still doing their cost analysis, marketing plans, war plans, whatever. And while the other guys are still selling 8 to 1. So...
and they're going for a niche within a niche within a niche within a niche within a niche, aren't they? They're going really for that little part of the market, but there's only 7 people in the world that do it. It's a real. I mean, but you've got quite a few platforms in your operation, Louis. But they tend to be the 3-letter one, don't they? I mean, how many?
I've said this over and over again. It's not so much of the virtue of the platform, is the availability worldwide of the platform, where you can go anywhere in the world and order a battery or a propeller or even an entire drone that replaces the one you shipped across the world. So
do you see a market? is the future bespoke drone manufacturer, but one that's compatible with DJI batteries. So you can have a drone specifically designed for your application. And when you go overseas, you don't have to take the batteries. You buy some DJI batteries there, plug them into your bespoke drone, and you got the best of both worlds.
No, batteries would be the killer application, because, as you guys know, come on, who in his right mind, unless they have a commercial operation, is going to pay for shipment of batteries for an M300?
So why don't you get a drone that just uses regular lipos? You can buy them anywhere. All countries go and get a 6S Tattoo 12,000 milliamp pack, plug it in, bingo, nothing special.
Sorry, Bruce, that does not work. I've been on that route with the crazy batteries, 12,000, 6,000, 20,000 milliamp Tattoo batteries, and the battery management on a commercial operation is a nightmare. Okay, DJI batteries have that on their end. You just put it, and all the battery management is done by the chargers.
Yeah, but you could make an external unit as part of your total solution package.
Oh,
that did that.
God, Bruce. Yes, you can also go to a lat and do your own propellers. Come on.
Yeah, you could too. Whittle from a tree. Get a branch, whittle it down.
You know what I mean. It's the convenience factor and the time that you don't spend developing for the basics. If some manufacturer wants to go the right way, just pick the last TB50 batteries and make a drone with 6 of them. Oh, there was one, but DJI is deprecating it. So you get a $700 M300 battery. You need 2, and to do a viable commercial operation, you need at least 4 sets a day, and charges to that. That amounts immediately to a big hassle on shipping across the world. So it's not a good way of shipping. But if you can buy them locally, it's okay. It's $1,500 each set. But if a manufacturer does a good drone that is compatible with DJI batteries, they'll have their way on the market. It's perhaps one of the most critical aspects of all of this.
So why haven't hybrid power packs taken off? Internal combustion engine that replaces a battery with a little generator on it, and before you ship it, you can strip it and clean it so there's no solvents in it, so it can be shipped without any problems. And then at the other end, you put some fuel in it, start her up, bing bing, you got a whole day's flight.
Payloads, payload capacity, Bruce. It's all on that.
Why? You get the energy density of petrol is pretty high, and those little motors can produce a lot of power.
Yeah, but the problem is the capacity, the size. Come on, everybody's trying to do smaller drones, and you are going to put a new system that would make the tendency of the market to go to even larger drones. Come on, as much as I respect the free fly guys with their Alt 8 drones, oh my God, it is such a pain in the backside to ship one of those things around. Come on, I have a picture here of one of our systems with an M300, and there's a set of boxes higher than me with RTK antennas and everything. Come on, it's absolutely, come on, I have packages with 300 kilos and 2 drones. It's mind-boggling. So no,
Free Fly is the interesting one, isn't it? Because they've been around a long time now, and they've made some what looks to be some very good products. They had that Alter X, yet they just don't seem to have gained any real place in the market. Even, you know, they build some nice quads. I know they're used in heavy industry and film, but from an average commercial operator point of view, they just don't seem to have got
exist, do they?
Yeah.
But that's the issue I was mentioning. You don't get the availability that you get with DJI, and there, come on, manufacturers, get your act together, establish a good distribution network across the world, and you'll get industrial people running after you. And and don't forget, a viable battery management system. And by the way, please, batteries below 100 watt hours.
Ian's got a viable battery management system. He throws them out when they catch on fire. It works for him.
And look, we've not even seen the open source. Look, Louis, there's been support for smart batteries in Pilot for 2+ years now. Yet we still don't have any real adoption or real move towards it in the open source community. I know Philip's been working on the board for the Solo for quite some time, but that's more of like a side project. But it's just not happening, is it? It's just not propagating outside of Autel, DJI.
Is the market big enough to worry for anyone to care? Is it just a sign that the market's so small that people are just struggling on?
We've seen adventures from several manufacturers, from several custom drones charger that have one plug in the middle of an XT60. We've seen all of that, but that's just a timid approach to the right direction. There is not a Come on, guys, it's a battery management system that is required. No more, no less. You sort that out, and the world is your daddy. And to the drone manufacturers, just do your system compatible with DJI. Hack is battery protocol, and Bob's your uncle.
And the thing is, it's not really hard to do. DJI use a laptop chipset as their battery management. It's pretty much the same chipset used in any laptop battery for the battery management. It's all lithium-ion polymers. It's all the same. Yes, they have their own firmware on top of it. What I think the hard part is DJI have been really good at making their batteries safe. And look, there is no question DJI's batteries are incredibly safe compared to most LiPos. I probably couldn't even get to 3 fingers the amount of DJI LiPos I've seen actually go up. There was an Inspire 1.1 many years ago. It's rare. It doesn't happen outside of crash damage, obviously, but it doesn't happen, or getting shot. I suppose if you shoot the battery,
you haven't seen enough batteries. You haven't seen enough DJI.
They don't go up that often.
You might want to share some information that you put in one of your videos recently. What's the lifetime of the battery for the DJI FPV drone? How many cycles are people getting out of those?
We're starting to see failures between 100 and 122.
That's not what's the price?
No.
What's the price of the battery?
But
they don't self-destruct. They don't
$1 a fly.
$1.50 is what I'd estimate, Gary.
And it really depends on your usage pattern. For instance, our pilots are instructed to always try to land around 50%. So they charge the batteries very fast, and they don't eat up too much the batteries, although sometimes they are working at 40 degrees Celsius ambient temperature. So let's just say that the car AC units are usually a bonus to get the battery systems running comfortably. And we get a larger number of cycles. So
it is. If you look after them very well, you can get, the killer to all DJI batteries is heat and short cycling. So they need a minimum of half an hour rest time. I've always said this on DJI packs. They need to rest before recharge. What we're starting to see on the FPV side is we've got guys with 3 or 4 packs who are doing back-to-back charging, field charging, multiple flights. We've seen it with the Mavics. They will start to expand and die very, very quickly. To me, this wasn't a surprise, because in my initial video, I talked about this. I made a battery video on that drone about a month after it released, and I actually say in it, as for longevity, on other models, we've seen around 100 cycles. For the FPV community, this is a bit of a shock. Not that I expect many FPV packs to last much more than 100. Mine are lucky to get to 20 or 30 sometimes. However, if I
They're
crash,
usually well in flames by then, eh?
yeah, they've normally burst by that point. But it is, look, there is a price for safety. So what people need to understand with that product is you're paying for something that allows you to treat it really badly, and it will still, for the most part, be okay, apart from ripping the arms off and damaging it and all of that crap. But battery wise,
I'm just disappointed that it wasn't more popular as a craft, because by now we'd have third-party manufacturers producing lipos that were a perfect fit inside that case. So when your lipo failed, you just don't have to buy a new DJI battery, just replace the lipo that's inside it. That would be a great market.
That would be, the annoyance is they've actually put firmware locks in place to prevent that in the past on the Inspire ones. If it detected a large shift in capacity, because it logs the capacity over time, it trends it, so it knows the battery's at 80%, 70%. If it then saw suddenly it was gaining 5 more minutes flight time, it would work for 1 or 2 cycles and lock down and give you a battery error, because it then went, oh, something's off here. And DJI actually did that on the Phantom 3 and Inspire ones. So again, it's money making, isn't it?
And that's why we buy Shark Bite, eh?
Yes.
That is because nobody cracked their battery protocol and did a reset on the firmware of the battery. So if you do that, you will also have to do a reset on the counters and log files on the battery firmware. So it's a catch-22. And if you want to use the battery correctly, you have to understand their protocol, or write your own protocol on top and put it on top of the DJI protocol.
So what's the aviation regulator? What's the regulator going to say when you say there is a way of making these batteries switch themselves off or reduce use, or it might even happen in flight? Who knows?
Well, it did.
How would they? Did it?
M200.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and the regulator go on top of that. But that is in no way is that best aviation practice to have to make a system just for your commercial gain that can shut itself down.
What's the best aviation practice, Gary, is do X amount of hours with one component and then replace it. You want to apply the same to
so many cycles. Well,
in New Zealand, they do that already. I've got the guy here that's got the Agris drone. He has to replace his props after so many hours, regardless of condition. I think that was one of the things he had to do. But I mean, this whole thing could be solved. All these safety issues go away if we have a ground-based visual observer.
Yes, of course.
And look, the DJI alone, has been. Sorry, go. I was just going to say, there's been news this week. Samsung have been in the news, for those who haven't seen, that they can remotely lock down all of their TVs. That's been in the electronics news this week.
And why did that get into your news?
Nothing to do with a lot of telly stolen in South Africa, was it?
Yeah. It's exactly why. That's why they did it. They rolled it out to lock down all the.
Is your telly still going, Gary? Is yours still working? That new one you got the other day?
Funny enough, yeah. That's it's. I thought that was quite interesting, because people here were saying, "Oh, great, all those looted TVs are going to be locked down," and I was saying they can lock them down. It's like, can they actually do that?
Is that only if you're connected to the interwebs? It won't be through a broadcast signal, will it?
And I've got a newish Samsung, and when I bought it, I have a feeling it had to go online. My problem is I automatically plugged the cable in, so I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't. But I do wonder, is this another case like DJI, product activation?
Yeah, that's why we bought a new 4K TV a while ago. It was the dumb TVs, no smarts in it at all, and I have a Raspberry Pi for all my media stuff, and I have a little a Chromecast for my online stuff. The TV itself is just a screen, and that's the way I'm going to keep it.
Well, it's just a monitor, isn't it? It's all you got to buy these days. I'm really going to buy anything else. But did you get one of those ones from that nice Mr. Baird? Did you?
I got it on eBay from someone in South Africa.
Yeah. No, obviously that story was linked to the South African looting, I assume, Ian, wasn't it, in England?
Yes. It was all part of the tellies that were missing and that. But look, at the end, DJI have some pretty shady practices. I think, they make some fantastic products. This firmware thing is another example of doing the right thing the wrong way in there. I don't think anyone would ever complain at them patching a vulnerability, but to release a firmware and then pull that firmware with no hints or info or anything else, and what the real hint in that is, it's a bigger problem than they can solve in 24 or 48 hours. Because if they could have solved it in 24 or 48 hours, they would have just rolled a new firmware, which they've done in the past.
But it speaks to what amount of testing do they do on these things before they release them.
Oh God, testing is so overrated. Come on, Gary.
Fair enough then. Yeah, fair enough.
AI would fix that, like it fixed Facebook's analysis of pictures recently. But we've got to remember that these companies are not here to be your friends. They're here to empty your wallet as thoroughly as they can.
And that's what I was saying about DiviMath earlier. It's the same thing. We can like a company, but they all get treated the same. You have to treat them all with the same amount of scrutiny. Just because someone's US based or UK or anything, no one gets a free pass. I do remember, if I go back, DJI used to have a really good beta testing program. I was part of it. I was one of a number of people who was involved, and they did have this really good program that you could get involved in. They used to have decent release schedules. Then you test the firmware feedback, they change it. They have lost so much in the last 2 to 3 years of the infrastructure, the people who used to be involved in this stuff. And I do see the next 2 years, even with product releases, being a bit all over the place because they've lost so much. And look, no one person makes a company great, but they had a lot of good people who did a lot of stuff that most people didn't see that made a big difference for the community, and that those people are gone. And without their feedback, I do wonder where they're going to end up, because I think most of their testing is done in software environments.
Software in the loop is the most likely. But the thing is, they have a bigger problem now because they've announced publicly that they are going to refactor their SDK to a new 5.x version. And I believe their biggest problem is looking in that direction, because please take in consideration that both the Mini 2 and the Air 2S still don't have support on their SDK. And it was announced by their support people that there will be a 5.0 release of the SDK, and I think that's where their focus is at the moment, because it might not be such an easy task to get right, and I believe they want to get it right. So as many thousands of programmers, hundreds of programmers, tens of programmers they might have on the payroll, I think their focus is there, and this is just a distraction.
Do you think it might not also be that the market itself has contracted? People aren't buying as many drones as they did, and so the heyday, the big dollar days of DJI are over. Their revenues, I haven't seen any figures, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were down. And if you got decreasing revenues, you've got to cut costs, and the way you cut costs is you cut people, and that keeps your profit sustained, because profit is an addictive thing. Once you've got it, you want to keep it. And I don't think that they are probably in a position to have that amount of resource available anymore.
I do think that the heyday has passed. And part of that is the buzz is gone. If you look at the old schedules in the Phantom lines, it was every 12 months, if that. There was a new drone every 9 to 12 months. The Phantom 3, the Phantom 3 series, the Phantom 4, the Phantom 4 Pro. The Mavics then started every sort of 12 months. The Inspires was longer, but we're now years down the line. Now, you're only doing that when you need to recoup costs, because you've put so much cost into the development. There's no one for them to battle with. As much as we like to say Autel, they're a nice company and they're a great company, but let's not pretend they sell 10% of what DJI sell. Is it 1%? So I do think they might be shocked when they come back to the market, because they've allowed the market to settle and people to realize, oh, perhaps I'm happy with the drone I've got. And it's going to take a lot of advertising money to YouTubers to say how great the next drone is. And I'm not talking about the likes of me and Bruce. I'm talking the Casey
About me. I'd have to do it. Yeah.
The Garys, yeah. I think what the market needs right now is the Karma 2 with a slightly better fitting battery.
It's a self-ejector mechanism.
Yes. I was going to say something, but I won't. It's they're still probably churning out 10,000 smaller units a day. They're probably still selling.
The margins must be getting low because the price. Look at that SE. What was it? The Mavic Air SE or something? The cheap one. I mean, the margins are being slashed. The sales volumes are slashed. They looks to me like they're busily trying to find a way to re-establish major revenue streams. And you can't just say, "Oh, we're going to release a new product," because the cost of producing a new product is enormous, and you've got to recoup that. And perhaps they haven't released new products because they know it would take way too long to recover that development cost. Better just to re-release with a different letter after the end of it, like the Mavic 2 or the Mini 2 or the SE or whatever. It's a cheaper way to try and get a bit of money out of a market that's already saturated with your product.
It is interesting that there's a race to the bottom, sorry, Gary, whilst there's no competition. So they are dropping prices lower and lower, yet they're not competing with anyone. Now that only smells of...
can't come in.
Come on.
But that only smells of...
come on. Have you seen the price of an Air 2S with the controller? 1,800 euros. Come on, race to the bottom.
Yeah, but that's not what the ones they're selling loads of. It's the Mini 2 and the Minis. That's where they're selling the numbers. You know, they're intentionally making their best-selling product their cheapest product. And that, you know, they've probably got to sell 3 of them to every E2S just to get anywhere, probably more.
No, people are so vain, and they, oh God, I have the Air 2S. Oh, you only have the Mavic Mini 2 or the Mini 2. People are going to buy the Air 2S because it's newer and
it works with smartphones
and it takes better pictures at night, although you cannot fly at night. So
it works with smartphones. That's the way the smartphone industry works. You've got to have this year's model or you're so last year. And the thing also is that the regulations have forced everybody down to the Mavic Minis because it's just a whole different area when you're sub 250. I think that has forced them down into that market because people who don't want to be bothered with registration or want extra flight privileges have to go down there.
Yeah. I would love to see numbers right now. I'd love a dealer to announce, you know, a big dealer. I can't imagine in COVID drone sales.
A future X dealer then.
A future X dealer. Yeah. If there's anyone who doesn't want to hold on to their DJI official status,
please send an email too. What was I forgotten what I was going to say?
Yeah.
Put on hold with C labeling not happening yet, and yes, that's very, very true. Actually, that's very true. That is another step to wait on, isn't it? Is the C labeling? When's that supposed to be?
Remote ID. DJI must be so upset that FAA hasn't just said, "Oh, we'll just use DJI system for remote ID," because they're pushing it there with.
Yeah, but it's 2 or 3 years ago they became upset. They told them they weren't going to use it. That was when they kicked them off the ark, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean that's what I mean. What are they earning for all the restrictions they're putting on their drones? They're earning no brownie points. There's no kudos. Why are they wasting all this effort, geofencing and all that sort of crap? Just say, look, if they said tomorrow we've got a new drone with no geofencing, they'd sell a fortune's worth of them because people don't want these restrictions. That's how they could get back some real revenue.
What people, Bruce? Not the common guy that goes to the next electronics shop.
Yeah, him and his girlfriend. Both of them. Yeah. They would. Yeah, I would.
Yeah, but you're in the know. The people that go and buy a drone will be happy. Oh, I'm so happy that the drone does not let me do bad things. Come on, Bruce. You know it's like that. You know it's like that. Come on. And if the drone enforces you the nanny state, much better for people that they don't. Come on, you saw that thing about the limiting cars in EU and around the world, and the header of that new law says that consumers were very delighted because they would not get speed tickets. God, that's so ridiculous, and that's the
Bureau
same.
speak. There's bureaucrat speak, because you look at the response of the FAA to the NPRM for remote ID, and they have things like a large number of recipients, but they don't quantify, is that a majority, or is it just like 12 is a large number if you're in a phone booth, but they use these weasel words to try and make things sound different, you see, and that's what's happening with these bureaucrats with that thing in the EU. They're saying, yeah.
Come on, regular Joes and Marys are very happy that the drone will take care of their legality while flying.
Exactly, because no one has ever gone somewhere to fly their DJI drone and come up and said you can't take off and gone, wow, that's great. I'm so happy I bought a DJI drone so I can't fly the bloody thing.
Yeah, but that's like that. It's only geeks like you and me that are concerned with why can I not fly? Come on, let's try hack the system. Let's call Ian to hack the no-fly zone system while he looks for the press release. But that's the thing. People, regular Joes and Marys, will be very happy with the no-fly zones.
I disagree.
I'm not so sure. Yeah,
but your opinion is as valid as mine.
Yeah.
Not in the modern world. It's who shouts loudest. But they're moving towards autonomous cars and making sensors for autonomous vehicles, aren't they? So I reckon we'll watch DJI just tilt away into the manned vehicle market with their expertise and their scientists, and a much, much, much bigger market to aim at than our little world.
Or they'll bring out a software update that bricks all their drones and they'll say, oh, you just have to buy again.
Yeah, maybe. And then they'll get most people to put it in, and then they'll remove it quick, and there'll be no knowledge. But the waffle is beginning to start. What other news have we seen this week?
In Hamilton, Ohio, in the USA, they still haven't learnt from other people, because the local council is going to pass, or is looking at passing, laws to prohibit drone voyeurism. So you can't use a drone to spy on people. You won't be able to fly drones over other people's property. You won't be able to fly drones over council buildings. Do they not understand they have no jurisdiction in the airspace? But they're going to do it anyway. It's like, how many times has this played out in America, where councils and local authorities have said, oh, we're going to stop people doing this. And the FAA has come along and said, no, you can't stop them. You don't have any jurisdiction here. But they're doing it again. Are people really this stupid?
Yes.
And are there not already laws that prohibit voyeurism and annoying people with drones? Isn't there public nuisance and all that sort of stuff? So why are they? We seem to have with drones, we're not happy to use the laws we've got. We're going to make new ones, because anything you do with a drone that endangers somebody falls under reckless endangerment. And all countries have laws that prohibit reckless endangerment. But no, we need extra laws that define how you're endangering them and all that. So it's just, it's baloney.
It keeps coming up, but I think to a degree we're getting the so we're peeking around the corner we're opening the shower curtain of local councils, realizing, oh, hang on a minute, there might actually be a spot in this here for us to monetize a little bit of lower airspace. We better start having a little word about this whole drone thing and making sure people know we're powerful. We're very, very powerful. We have to make sure any delivery companies delivering pizzas or whatever looks after their riders and looks after.
Well, they've done that in New Zealand, because our regulations require that you get the permission of the property owner before you can fly a drone over them. There are parts of New Zealand, like there's a tourist thing down the road, Hooker Falls. It's a lovely waterfall. You're not allowed to fly over there unless you get permission from the local Maori iwi, the tribe that own the stuff, and they will charge you hundreds of dollars just to apply for permission, with no guarantee you're going to get it. And if you don't get permission, you don't get your money back. So it's already monetized that airspace very successfully.
That's I think councils are beginning to think, oh gosh, there could be something in this for us, and so we better get some rules on the table quick. But as you quite rightly say, it's the aviation authorities that have the word. There was a terrible mid-air accident that I saw a report of in Switzerland. Of course, I don't have it ready. but it was a helicopter climbing up into, was it a Jadel, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a squirrel climbing up and just banged, walloped the Jadel. And that was that for all involved.
Did they have ADSB?
Well, ADSB, FLARM, just a radio call, helicopter, whatever. Lifting
but I mean, like, again, why are we as a hobby going to be required to have remote ID and eventually conspicuity in aircraft operating safely in Class G airspace? Yet these manned aircraft, the mid-air collisions are claiming lives almost every month. They're not required to have this at all. We really need to take this case to the regulators and say, stop wiping the drink rings off the bar of the Titanic because there's an iceberg coming through the wall. Deal with the big problems before you deal with the little ones. But the whole hobby is so... There's no one pulling together. We're not, all different, segregated. Everyone's divided, and we're getting conquered easily. That's why we've got the Harry Day Club starting soon. But I mean, it's like if we don't do that, we're stuffed.
Well, the no hand flying at the bar, but just dear viewer, so you understand, the helicopter was pointing into the sun on the side of a mountain. The Jadel was coming towards him and above him, very high. So the Jadel couldn't look down to the helicopter. The helicopter couldn't look backwards to the Jadel coming, and they were both looking into the sun, and he just lifted straight up and straight through him, and everybody on board both aircraft died. But that was just a radio call. A radio call on a common frequency would have done that one.
Yep, but that's the thing. We have this, because all the regulators say you have to have an observer when you're flying FPV because of your lack of situational awareness, even though you've got 160 degrees of vision out the front with nothing blocking your view, and the consequences of being into something minimal, and your ears are working. No, the helicopter couldn't hear the Jodel couldn't hear the helicopter because they can't hear things with the big motors whizzing around. So there's no appreciation of the actual thing because the people who make these rules for models have never actually flown the damn things. They don't know what they're talking about. We shouldn't take rules from people that have not a clue what they're doing.
Indeed. No, that was a litany of disasters. That one, a real tragedy. And they have a look for it. I can't remember what it's called, but there is because there's GoPro footage from both the helicopter and from the Jadel. So the whole as a helicopter comes up, you see the Jadel appearing in the wide angle, of the
It's
GoPro.
so common, isn't it? Low wing aircraft above, high wing aircraft below, or helicopter below, because it's happened in New Zealand. We had a training aircraft, had a helicopter, had a training aircraft. Exactly the same scenario. There's such large areas where your field of view is obstructed in a manned aircraft. It's not on FPV though. You got the great big.
I think the best thing is to ban helicopters. They're a very dangerous thing. They can fly any direction. They're just like drones, but even worse, drones with people inside. So
but this is the thing that those aircraft all had observers sitting in the passenger seat, and it still didn't save them.
Yeah, the drones with passengers on board has brought up the EHang things, done some flying. I want to say in Austria. I think that's where it was this last week. And that brought up the thorny subject of exactly which flight controller and what software was being used. And there's some quite angry people in the RG pilot community because that's what they're using. And they're using a Pixel 1 to fly the thing. So it's terrible. So that got a little bit of airtime in the Book of the Face this week. There's nothing clever or proprietary in there. And that, I think, is all I have. Does anyone else have anything else?
Speaking of nothing clever or proprietary, here in New Zealand, have you heard of Dawn Aerospace?
Yes.
Yes. They just completed another successful test flight to, I think it was 1,000 meters with a radio control model jet, and that's going to take them into space. They've been doing this for like 2 years now, and that's what they've got, to 1,000 meters with a radio control model jet. And I'm thinking, how much money's gone into this so far, and how likely are they to succeed by basically saying we're going to use a model jet to get us high enough to use a little rocket to get into space? They're so far away from their objective that it's like, but they obviously got investors pouring money into this thing, and no one does their due diligence.
Keep going to the Richard Branson thing was interesting as well, wasn't it? The divergence from flight in as whatever that Virgin Galactic thing is called, went skyward, and then nearly got in a position where the thing would break up. So Yeah, it's right on the squirty edge, and okay, they've been told off and slap on the wrist now, but the fact that they were even allowed to try was pretty amazing, considering how dodgy.
And we look at it. The only one of these billionaires that isn't involved in drones is our friend Elon. Yeah. What does he know that the rest don't know? What does he know that the rest don't know, eh?
That's a very, 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 very fair point. A very fair point indeed, actually. So, on that point, has anyone else got anything else? Going once. Going twice.
Louis muted.
Louis muted. Hooray! Oh, still muted. Shall I give him time to unmute?
Sorry. I have a complaint.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you told us that there would be a someone from a manufacturer here, and I had all my knives ready to start.
And I'm not going to reveal who that manufacturer was going to be. Much begins with A and ends with tell. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know where they.
That's a formal complaint. Please file that on your complaint book.
No, and the guys from D-Drone couldn't make it either. What a shame.
Oh, do you still get adverts for them? Or they
I do want you to get Transport Canada on, because I want to know what they're doing to review their training facilities after the thing. I'd love to hear someone from Transport Canada come on, or even if you could say Transport Canada refused to comment or appear on the show. That says as much as anything.
It does, doesn't it? The old put a question.
They should restrict them to sub 250 craft. These police people, they'd be much safer.
They're very, very accurate at hitting things, and as we all know from experience, it's actually quite hard to hit things. So they must be very, very good pilots.
We reached the conclusion that they have a very busy airspace.
That's because
that's right, Louis.
Like Luxembourg with 30 million people.
With altitude angel when you need it.
Vatican City.
Vatican City, yeah, that's right. We are definitely off topic here. Wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves in this strange Delta variant.
Obviously, Ian's watching my OnlyFans page. See his face. Woo!
Yeah.
So I was just adjusting something. Now to turn the fan on.
Well, there we are. Oh, there we are. You see,
that just clears the smoke, doesn't it? That's what you have to say for.
Do we think there's going to be any drone news next week?
Well, because there should be. There should be, because they will have had this commercial expo in America.
And the 10th is the DJI thing, isn't it? Which is the Osmo.
Oh, yes. It's going to be the Osmo camera. Yeah.
Oh, you already broke your NDA, Ian.
I don't have one.
No.
You honestly think they talk to me anymore after the last 3 videos I've made? And the recent conversations, I'm certainly not on.
I think Brandon wants you on the friendly list again. You're temporarily on the naughty list. Don't worry.
Don't worry, no one will be there long enough to remember who I am shortly anyway, so it won't matter. Well, it's quite funny. There's this happens for those who watch the PC gaming ones. Gamers Nexus are very good at being very vocal, but one of the funny comments he made is you do end up on the ban cycle for about 3 to 6 months until the staff turnover happens, and then someone goes, "Why don't we talk to them anymore?" And it just keeps going round and round and round. So
Yeah. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, see you next week, 2100 GNT. Be GNT. Be safe out there. Bye-bye.
Who's this Timeless Truths talking nonsense down in the chat?
Exactly. Cheers, everyone. Take care. 1 click, 2 clicks. Let's see how long it takes. Still very long. Very long indeed. Very long to stop. I've clicked the buttons. We're still here.
Must be running Open HD.
No.
An error occurred. It's not letting me stop.
It's the battery management system. It's the battery management system of your mouse. Come on, Gary.
Did I do a firmware update?
We're here all week, folks. Try the veal.
Yeah, try the veal. That'd be great. This will be the first time we
cut the green wire, Gary. Cut the green wire.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to let me stop. It's not.
Nobody gets to go home now, and Ian's still muted.
Yes, everyone has to stay here.
And welcome to the live after show where everyone wants to talk about the stuff we can't say on air. We're offline, aren't we, Gary? Let's just carry on.
Yes. The truth will out. That is what we normally do, isn't it? But yes. Shall I try again? Right, dear viewer, if you're still here, thank you for following the chaos. I'm going to try again. Otherwise, I don't know. How am I going to finish this if I can't do this?
It's definitely still streaming on YouTube.
One,
yeah.
Twice.
It's YouTube, bro.
Oh, no.
Try refreshing.
You don't have any pre-recorded stuff you can stick up?
No.
And now the potter's wheel. Yes.